Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome again to this week's edition of Pat in the Middle. I'm your host, Gary Anthony Ramsey. If you're an independent thinker, just right of center, left of center, Democrat, Republican, that is not in step with the mainstream in your party, then we're here for you. You're among the independent thinkers that everybody seems to be talking about lately, about every poll and every TV show on the Sunday talk circuit. Talking about the independents. So if you're one of those independent thinkers who don't need your party wingnuts to guide you in your decision making, you are the people we're here for. If you're not happy with the way extremism in both parties made a mess out of things, and now only in the 11th hour do they care about what you think, you're the ones who have to take back control of the wheel and steer the country in the right direction. It is 10:01 on the East Coast, 7:01 in the morning on the West Coast, left coast, 6:01 p.m. in Baghdad, and 7:31 p.m. in Kabul, Afghanistan. Those subjects we talk about that we've been talking about over the past few months do not trump the economy. Number one on people's minds. And every week we talk about different things, but we've been leading up to this particular point for quite some time, and we finally have some guests that we've been looking for a while to be able to deal with this very important subject. Denial is a terrible inhibitor when it comes to overcoming any problem. Now, why do I say this? Well, many of you have come to terms finally with your denial about how bad things were during the Bush years. But there are a great deal of you also who are still in denial about how allegedly great things were under the Clinton administration. Now, since we're here to talk about the economy, and there is to say that the problem is there is enough blame to go around, but to simply say that it started with the Bush years would be an oversimplistic and inaccurate start to this discussion. There are many factors, and there were plenty of warning signs about this crisis a lot longer than 8 years ago. But in the today, there are 15 million Americans out of work, another 7 to 10 million who are working but not making enough to make ends meet. Major corporations and medium-sized ones are struggling to keep pace with the faltering economy, which could mean their end or the end of even more jobs. The deficit keeps growing and growing. There are two wars and a health care initiative that could cost another $1 trillion set to hit the floor of the Senate. And will the U.S. have to mortgage itself off even more? And what about that TARP that was supposed to be the big save-it-all? You remember that, don't you? Billions of dollars that the government gave or loaned away to struggling companies to keep the so-called bottom from falling out? What did we really get out of it? And will we have to do it again? Well, once again, we've brought some of the brightest people to the forum to talk about the issue and to hopefully find out how bad it's going to get, when will it get better, and what do the ripple effects have on all of us. Dr. Margaret Simms of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies is here, as is Med Yanis. He's president of the International Institute of Management. They're both here to give us some insight as to when this trouble started, how bad it'll get, and what is going to be needed to make things right for real, not in theory. We will get to chat with them in just a moment, but first, we will take care of our retro wine for the week. But as always, if you feel like you need to chime in, give us a call. That number is 347-989-0559. So reject the dogma, reject the rhetoric, embrace the facts. The largest economy in the world, with a gross domestic product of over $15 trillion, is in serious trouble. Unless you've been on Mars, you know that the U.S. economy has been in a recession/depression now for about 18 months and counting. The banks aren't lending. Property values are down nationwide. Jobs are evaporating. What is the Obama administration going to do about it after promising change? What are they doing? Even though they and the Federal Reserve are saying that they expect growth in the fourth quarter of next year, and then that actually growth could start as early as the second quarter of next year, depending on which one you believe. Unemployment is still expected to stay above 10% up until and possibly through 2011. Ouch. Cannot be good news for the Democrats in 2012, and it might also not serve Republicans well if over the next year or so they are seen as the party of no, blocking every attempt to try to turn things around. But regardless of who gets credit or the blame, how did we get here? How do we get out? Give us a call at 347-989-0559. Joining me to talk about this, she is a senior fellow at the Urban Institute and director of the Institute's Low Income Working Families Project. She's nationally recognized expert on the economic well-being of African Americans. She spent 21 years at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies in a number of leadership positions. Receiving her doctorate from Stanford University, she's also the author and editor of several books, including Job Creation Prospects and Strategies. Dr. Margaret Simms joins us on Mad in the Middle. Hello, Doctor.
Good morning.
And also joining us is the president of International Institute of Management in Las Vegas. He's an expert on strategy, leadership, and business development. Some of his clients include the U.S. government, American Express, AT&T, and Merrill Lynch. He's an MBA. He got his MBA in marketing from the Edinburgh Business School in the UK, and he has executive education training certificates from MIT. He was writing articles warning about the sky falling back as far as 2007. He's been seen on Fox, MSNBC, and he's published various articles in magazine, including his most extensive breakdown of the economic crisis, which you can catch in CEO Quarterly magazine. Med Yanis joins us also on Mad in the Middle. Hello, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, Doctor, excuse me, from a neutral position, if that's one you can take, could you give us a breakdown, in your opinion, on how this crisis was created and what influences from the right and the left have helped to create this mess over the last 20 years?
Well, I don't know that you could say this particular crisis was 20 years in the making. Well, we certainly had a long period of economic prosperity that I think gave people the false impression, as these tend to, that there would be no downturns. And people in particular thought that some forms of investment would certainly never go down, such as housing. So one major contributor to the current crisis was the housing bubble, where people were highly leveraged, and when that collapsed, that led to downturns in the housing market, which had ripple effects because not only were there issues in the finance industry, but in the construction industry with a downturn in housing, you would find very few people employed in building new housing or new office buildings. And one of the things that I think is has been an ongoing issue even after the TARP operations began is that many builders have not been able to get the kind of financing that would enable them to, recharge in terms of construction.
Now, Ms. Nadianis, you can tell me, you've been screaming about this now since 2007. What was it that you saw back then that were the first signs of trouble to you?
The inflated asset prices. You talked about the left and the right and how each party contributed to the crisis. And that's where the problem is. Most of what you hear in the media is a blame game. The contention point right now between the left and the right is about how much regulation or taxes are needed to solve the problem. Now, as an independent technocrat, I can tell you neither party is the cause of the crisis, and neither ideology is the solution to it.
That's pretty scary if you say that neither side has a solution.